The first crack of thunder split the sky like a gunshot, sending a murder of crows erupting from the ancient jacaranda tree that had stood sentinel over the Ribeiro farm for 3 generations. Elena Ribeiro, 17 years old with eyes the color of Brazilian coffee beans, stood frozen in the doorway of her family's weathered farmhouse, clutching a manila envelope that felt heavier than the storm clouds gathering overhead. "Elena, minha filha, please understand." Miguel Ribeiro's voice cracked like dry leather, his calloused hands trembling as he reached for his daughter. The man who had once carried 100-pound coffee sacks on his shoulders now couldn't bear the weight of his own shame. "Don't!" Elena's scream tore through the humid afternoon air. "Don't you dare call me your daughter!" She thrust the papers toward him, her hands shaking with rage. "You sold me to Augusto Mantovani, the man they call the Widowmaker." Inside the house, a weak cough echoed from the master bedroom. Elena's fury momentarily wavered as she glanced toward the sound. Her mother, Gabriela, fighting stage 4 lymphoma, with the determination of a woman who had worked the coffee fields since she was 12. Miguel's weathered face crumpled. "The treatments, Elena. Hospital San Lucas wants 500,000 reais up front. Your mother has days, maybe a week. Mantovani," he offered. His voice trailed off, unable to finish the sentence that had condemned his daughter. "My freedom for her life," Elena whispered, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. The distant rumble of engines interrupted their confrontation. A convoy of obsidian Mercedes-Benz vehicles materialized through the coffee plants like mechanical predators, their pristine paint jobs an obscene contrast to the red earth that had sustained the Ribeiro family for generations. From the lead vehicle emerged Augusto Mantovani himself, 6 feet of calculated menace wrapped in a Tom Ford suit that cost more than the Ribeiro farm's annual harvest. At 62, his silver hair was immaculately groomed, his face carved from marble and cruelty. 3 wedding rings adorned a chain around his neck, trophies from his previous marriages, all of which had ended in tragedy. "Miss Ribeiro," Mantovani's voice slithered through the humid air like a venomous snake. His pale blue eyes, lifeless as a doll's, appraised her with clinical detachment. "Your photographs didn't do you justice. Though I see you've inherited your mother's fire." He paused, savoring the word. "I do so enjoy taming wild things." Elena straightened her spine, meeting his gaze with defiance that made her father flinch. "I am not a thing to be tamed, Senor Mantovani." A smile played at the corners of his thin lips, the expression of a cat toying with a mouse. "Not yet, my dear. But in 3 days' time at the Cathedral of São Paulo you will become Mrs. Augusto Mantovani. And then—" He let the threat hang in the air like the approaching storm. "Sir?" Miguel stepped forward, hat in hand. "The money. For my wife's treatment." Without looking away from Elena, Mantovani snapped his fingers. A bodyguard, built like a bull and twice as mean, approached with a briefcase. Inside lay neat stacks of Brazilian reais, more money than the Ribeiros had seen in their lifetime. "Consider it a down payment," Mantovani said smoothly. "The remainder will be transferred after the ceremony, provided, of course, that your daughter proves satisfactory." Elena's stomach churned. She thought of her mother, pale and withering in the bedroom, unaware that her only child was being bartered like livestock at a country fair. She thought of her dreams, university in Rio, studying marine biology, falling in love with someone who saw her as more than a beautiful possession. "I need to say goodbye to my mother," Elena said, her voice steady, despite the tremor in her hands. Mantovani checked his Patek Philippe watch, a timepiece worth more than most Brazilians earned in a decade. 5 minutes, then we leave for São Paulo. Your new life awaits." Elena rushed to her mother's bedside. Gabriela Ribeiro, once vibrant and strong, now resembled a faded photograph of herself. Her eyes, still sharp despite the morphine, locked onto her daughter's face. "Elena, what's happening? I heard shouting." Elena forced a smile, the greatest performance of her young life. "Nothing, Mai. I'm going to the city for a while. For work. Papa found me a good position." Gabriella's frail hand found Elena's. "You're lying, Mina Pequena. A mother always knows." Tears finally broke through Elena's facade. "I love you, Mai, more than all the stars in the sky. And I love you more than all the coffee beans in Brazil," Gabriella whispered back, their special saying since Elena was small. Outside, Mantovani's driver honked impatiently. Elena kissed her mother's forehead, memorizing the scent of jasmine soap and sickness, love and impending loss. As she was escorted to the waiting Mercedes, Elena caught sight of her reflection in the tinted window, a young woman in a simple white cotton dress about to enter a world of silk and shadows. The first drops of rain began to fall, mixing with her tears. Inside the car, Mantovani sat reading financial reports on his tablet, as casual as if he'd just purchased stocks rather than a human being. "Your room at the mansion is prepared," he said without looking up. "Tomorrow we'll visit Valentino for your wedding dress. Something virginal, I think. White lace, pearls. The media loves a fairy tale." Elena stared out the window as her childhood home disappeared behind curtains of rain. Her father stood in the muddy yard, the briefcase of blood money clutched to his chest, looking like a man who had just made a deal with the devil himself. The radio played softly, Maria Bethania crooning about love and loss. As the convoy wound through the mountains toward São Paulo, Elena made a silent vow. She would survive Augusto Mantovani. She would endure whatever cruelties awaited her in his gilded cage, but she would never, ever let him break her spirit. Thunder crashed overhead, and somewhere in the distance, a church bell tolled, counting down the hours to a wedding that would be anything but holy. In her pocket, Elena's fingers closed around a small object, her grandmother's rosary, passed down through generations of Ribeiro women. Each bead felt like a prayer, a hope, a rebellion against the fate that had been chosen for her. The storm intensified as they drove on, rain lashing the windows like tears from heaven itself. And in the back seat of that luxury car, speeding toward a destiny she never chose, Elena Ribeiro began to plan her survival in a world where love was currency and marriage was a death sentence. Little did she know that within Mantovani's mansion waited secrets darker than she could imagine, and that her sacrifice would unleash consequences that would shake the foundations of one of Brazil's most powerful families. As the lights of São Paulo glittered on the horizon like fallen stars, Elena whispered a promise to herself and to her dying mother. "I will not be another trophy on his chain. I will not be another ghost in his gallery of dead wives." But promises, like hearts, are fragile things in the hands of cruel men. The Mantovani mansion rose from Morumbi's hills like a monument to excess, a 30,000 square foot testament to pharmaceutical fortune built on other people's suffering. As the Mercedes approached the gates, Elena counted security cameras like a prisoner memorizing guard rotations, 16 visible, God knew how many hidden. "Welcome home, Mrs. Mantovani," the chauffeur announced prematurely, his eyes avoiding the rearview mirror. Elena's throat constricted. Mrs. Mantovani. In 2 days, that would be her name. Her identity erased like chalk from a blackboard. The mansion's doors opened to reveal Dona Lucrecia, the head housekeeper, a woman whose severe black dress and silver crucifix couldn't hide the fear in her eyes. "Señorita Ribeiro," she whispered, crossing herself quickly. "Your room is prepared. 3rd floor, east wing." "The same wing where my previous wives stayed," Augusto interjected smoothly, appearing behind Elena like a shadow, "though they've all been redecorated since their departures." Elena followed Dona Lucrecia up a marble staircase that seemed designed to make visitors feel small. Family portraits lined the walls, 3 beautiful young women, each captured in bridal white, their eyes holding the same expression Elena had seen in Trapped Animals. "Natalia, Beatriz, and Isadora," Augusto narrated from behind. "My former wives. Tragic losses, all of them. Natalia drowned in our pool. She never was a strong swimmer. Beatriz fell from the balcony, always was clumsy after wine. And poor Isadora." Her heart simply stopped. The doctors called it sudden arrhythmic death syndrome. Mysterious condition. Elena's fingers tightened on the banister. Each explanation sounded rehearsed like lines from a play performed too many times. Her room was a gilded prison. Crystal chandeliers, Persian rugs, a 4-poster bed that could sleep 6. But the windows had bars disguised as decorative ironwork, and the door locked from the outside. "Dinner is at 8, Donna Lucretia murmured, unpacking Elena's meager suitcase. "The master likes punctuality, and—" She hesitated, glancing at the door. "Never refuse his wine." "Why?" Elena asked. "Because refusing makes him angry. And when he's angry—" The housekeeper's hand unconsciously touched a faded bruise on her wrist. Alone, Elena explored her cage. The bathroom held enough designer cosmetics to stock a department store. The closet contained dozens of dresses, all in her exact size. Augusto had been planning this acquisition for longer than she'd imagined. Her exploration was interrupted by a knock. A young maid entered, no more than 15, with terrified eyes. "I'm Marcia," she whispered. "I'm assigned to you. If you need anything—" "How long have you worked here?" 6 months. Since my sister—" Marcia stopped, color draining from her face. "Your sister?" "She worked here too. Before she left suddenly. Please, señorita, don't ask questions, it's safer." At dinner, Elena met the inner circle of Augusto's empire. His son Ricardo, 40, with his father's cruel eyes but none of his charm. His business partner, Dr. Helio Vasconcelos, a man whose medical license had been revoked in 3 countries. And Augusto's personal lawyer, Silvana Torres, a woman who handled both corporate acquisitions and personal complications. To young love, Dr. Vasconcelos raised his glass, his smile not reaching his eyes. "May it last longer than usual." Ricardo snorted into his wine. Silvana shot him a warning look. The conversation revolved around pharmaceutical patents, offshore accounts, and congressional bribes. Elena pushed her food around her plate, each bite tasting like ash. "Not hungry, my dear?" Augusto asked. "Wedding nerves, perhaps?" "Just tired from the journey." "Then let me show you the gardens. The night-blooming jasmine is particularly lovely." The gardens were beautiful and isolated, perfect for private conversations or violence. "Your father is an interesting man," Augusto said, leading her deeper into the maze of hedges. "Did you know he once killed a man?" Elena froze. "What?" 20 years ago. A dispute over water rights. The other farmer threatened your mother. Miguel shot him. Self-defense, of course. The police never investigated. Amazing what a small bribe could accomplish back then. "You're lying." "Am I?" Ask yourself, what kind of man sells his daughter to save his wife? A desperate one, or one who's already crossed moral lines? They reached a fountain, a marble angel weeping eternal tears. In the moonlight, it looked like blood. "Here's what will happen, Elena. We'll marry Saturday. You'll smile for the cameras, share my bed, give me an heir, preferably male. And if you're very, very good, your mother will live. Cross me and—" He pulled out his phone, showing a live feed of her mother's hospital room. Amazing what money can buy, including the power to give life, or take it. Elena's knees buckled. Augusto caught her, his grip iron strong. "I own judges, police chiefs, senators. I've destroyed men more powerful than your father. But you—" His fingers traced her jawline. "You're special. So young, so pure, so breakable." A scream echoed from the mansion. Augusto checked his watch, unfazed. Ah, Ricardo's disciplining one of the staff. Theft, probably, or asking too many questions. Back in her room, Elena found Marcia waiting with a first aid kit and haunted eyes. "Let me guess, your hand slipped?" Marcia nodded, tears streaming silently. "What happened to your sister?" "She was pretty, like you," the master noticed. "Then, one day, gone. They said she ran away." But she left everything behind, even her daughter's picture. As Marcia tended to her own wounds, Elena noticed marks on the maid's arms, precise, clinical cuts. "The doctor," Marcia whispered. "He likes to experiment, says it's for science." That night, Elena stood at her barred window, looking out over São Paulo's glittering skyline. Somewhere out there, her father was spending blood money. Her mother was fighting for every breath. And she was trapped in a mansion full of monsters. Her phone, confiscated upon arrival, had been replaced with one that could only call approved numbers. The internet was restricted. Every door had cameras. Every conversation was likely recorded. But Elena had something her predecessors hadn't. She'd grown up tough, working the fields, learning to read weather patterns and human nature. She knew how to survive. Carefully, she began mapping the house in her mind. Security patterns, staff, schedules. Which employees were loyal to Augusto, which were terrified of him. Information was power, and she'd need every scrap to survive. A soft knock interrupted her planning. Donna Lucretia entered with a tea service. "Chamomile," she said. "With honey. It helps with sleep." As she poured, she slipped Elena a note. "Trust no one. The walls have ears. Your only friend here is silence." After the housekeeper left, Elena examined her room more carefully. Hidden cameras in the air vents, microphones in the light fixtures. Her prison was complete. But then she noticed something else, scratches on the bedpost. Words carved by desperate fingernails. "He watches, he waits, he kills." Below it, in different handwriting, "Find the red journal." And below that, freshest of all, "Don't drink the wine." Elena touched each message, feeling the desperation of the women who came before. 3 dead wives, 3 warnings. Outside, an owl hooted, a sound her grandmother always said meant death was near. Elena pulled out her grandmother's rosary and began to pray. Not for salvation, she knew none was coming, but for strength, for cunning, for the ability to survive where others had fallen. Tomorrow she would begin her performance. The dutiful fiancé, the grateful rescue from poverty, the lamb among wolves. But lambs grow teeth when cornered, and Elena Ribeiro was nobody's prey. As she lay in bed, pretending to sleep, she heard footsteps in the hallway. They paused outside her door. The handle turned slowly, testing, watching, waiting. The footsteps retreated, but Elena knew. Her ordeal was just beginning. In her dreams that night, 3 women in wedding dresses stood at the foot of her bed, their faces pale as moonlight, their warnings clear. "Find the journal, don't trust the wine. Never let him see you break. Survive." The Cathedral of São Paulo stood against the morning sky like a Gothic accusation, its spires piercing clouds that threatened rain. Elena sat before an ornate vanity in the bridal suite, watching makeup. Artists transform her into Augusto Mantovani's 4th wife, and potentially his 4th victim. "Hold still," commanded Valentina, the head stylist, her hands trembling slightly as she adjusted the veil. The master likes perfection. In the mirror, Elena barely recognized herself. The Valentino dress, a creation of ivory silk and Alençon lace worth more than her family's farm, transformed her from a coffee farmer's daughter into a billionaire's trophy. Her dark hair was swept into an elegant chignon, secured with diamond, pins that felt like tiny shackles. "You're beautiful," whispered Marcia, who had been assigned as her personal attendant. The young maid slipped something into Elena's bouquet, a small red leather journal weathered with age. "Isadora's diary," Marcia breathed. "I found it hidden in the library. Read it when you're alone. Know the truth." Before Elena could respond, the door burst open. Riccardo Mantovani entered, already drunk despite the early hour. "Well, well, wife number 4. His eyes raked over her with undisguised contempt. "I give you 6 months. Natalia lasted 8. Beatrice made it to 10. Isadora," he laughed bitterly. 13 months, unlucky number. "Riccardo," Silvana Torres, the lawyer, appeared behind him. Your father wants you downstairs now. After he left, Silvana approached Elena. A word of advice, child. Sign the prenuptial agreement without reading it. Ask no questions. Have no opinions. And maybe, you'll see your next birthday. The organ music began. Bach's Jesu Joy of Man's Desiring, twisted into something funereal by the cathedral's acoustics. Elena stood on shaking legs, clutching her bouquet like a shield. It's time, Donna Lucretia announced, crossing herself. The walk down the aisle felt endless. 500 of São Paulo's elite filled the pews, politicians, pharmaceutical, executives, society matrons. All watched her with expressions ranging from pity to morbid curiosity. How long would this one last? Augusto waited at the altar, resplendent in a bespoke tuxedo, his smile that of a spider watching a fly enter its web. Beside him stood Dr. Vasconcelos as best man, a choice that sent whispers through the crowd. As Elena approached, she noticed details others might miss. The slight discoloration on the altar cloth, old bloodstains, the way certain guests avoided eye contact, the security guards positioned at every exit. Dearly beloved, the Archbishop began, his voice carrying the weight of authority and complicity. Elena wondered how much he'd been paid to officiate this farce. The ceremony proceeded like a death march. When asked if anyone objected, the silence was deafening. Elena's eyes found the stained glass windows, Saint Sebastian pierced by arrows, Saint Lucy carrying her own eyes on a plate, saints who suffered. Do you, Elena Ribeiro, take this man? Thunder cracked outside. Several guests crossed themselves. I do, Elena whispered, sealing her fate. You may kiss the bride. Augusto's kiss was possessive, crushing. The crowd applauded as if watching a performance, perhaps they were. At the reception, held in the mansion's ballroom, Elena played her part flawlessly. She smiled for photographers, danced with dignitaries, and pretended not to notice the betting pool among the guests about her life expectancy. During the father-daughter dance, Miguel Ribeiro could barely meet her eyes. Your mother's responding to treatment, he mumbled. The doctors say, don't, Elena cut him off. Don't try to justify this. Elena, I had no choice. There's always a choice, Papa. You chose her life over mine. The music ended. Miguel retreated to his table where he proceeded to drink himself into oblivion. As the evening wore on, Elena noticed strange occurrences. Servants whispered urgently in corners. Dr. Vasconcelos kept checking his watch. Ricardo made frequent trips to the garden, returning more agitated each time. During a lull, Elena slipped away to the powder room. Locked inside a stall, she opened Isidora's journal. March 15th. He's getting worse. The experiments in the basement, the drugs he forces me to take. I found Beatrice's autopsy report, falsified. She didn't fall, she was pushed. April 2nd. I'm being poisoned. Small doses, untraceable. The wine at dinner, always the wine. Dr. Vasconcelos calls it cardiac glycosides, says it mimics heart failure. April 20th. If anyone finds this, know the truth. There's a room behind the library, proof of everything. The real autopsy reports, photos, his first wife, before Natalia, Maria Fernanda. She disappeared in 1995. She's still here, in the walls. Elena's hands shook, in the walls. A knock startled her. Senora? The cake cutting? She returned to find Augusto waiting with a champagne flute. A toast to my beautiful bride. The wine. Always the wine. Elena pretended to sip, then accidentally spilled it on her dress. How clumsy of me. Augusto's eyes narrowed. Indeed. As the guests departed, gifting envelopes thick with cash, blood money disguised as wedding presents, Elena steeled herself for what came next. The honeymoon suite had been prepared with obscene luxury. Rose petals covered silk sheets, candles, flickered like funeral pyres. Champagne chilled in silver buckets. "Drink," Augusto commanded, pouring 2 glasses. "I've had enough wine tonight." His hand tightened on the bottle. "I insist." "Actually," Elena said, thinking quickly, "I have a surprise for you. A special wine from my family's personal collection. Very rare. I've been saving it for my wedding night." Greed flickered in Augusto's eyes. He was a connoisseur, after all. "Show me." Elena retrieved a bottle from her luggage, a simple countryside wine her father made. Nothing special, but Augusto didn't know that. She poured 2 glasses, making sure to give him the fuller one. As he examined the label, she switched the glasses with practiced sleight of hand, a trick learned from her mischievous cousin. "To us," she toasted. They drank. Augusto savored the wine, pronouncing it surprisingly complex for peasant vintage. Within minutes, his eyes grew heavy. What did you—" "Nothing," Elena said truthfully. "You've poisoned yourself. With your own wine." He collapsed onto the bed, unconscious but breathing. The wine meant for her, laced with sedatives, the first step in whatever sick plan he'd devised, had found its intended victim. Elena worked quickly. She found his keys, his phone, his private documents. In his jacket pocket, a vial of clear liquid labeled only with chemical formulas. She photographed everything. Then she searched the room, finding what she dreaded: hidden cameras. Their wedding night was to be recorded. For his private collection? Blackmail? Or worse, using nail scissors, she cut the wires. Outside, footsteps approached. Ricardo's voice. "Father, the doctor's here for the examination." Examination? On their wedding night? Elena draped herself across Augusto's unconscious form, arranging her dress suggestively. When Ricardo entered with Dr. Vasconcelos, she affected drowsiness. "He's asleep," she murmured. "Very enthusiastic." Then suddenly tired. "Is that normal for men his age?" Ricardo's face darkened. The doctor checked. Augusto's pulse frowned at the wine glasses. Which glass was his? "I don't remember. Does it matter?" The 2 men exchanged looks. "No," Dr. Vasconcelos said finally. "Just ensure he rests. We'll postpone the examination." After they left, Elena barricaded the door. She had bought herself one night. Tomorrow Augusto would wake. He would know she'd outsmarted him, and then the real game would begin. She opened Isadora's journal again, reading by moonlight. "If you're reading this, you're already dead. You just don't know it yet. But maybe you can last longer than I did. Be smarter." The gardener, Tomas, he helped sometimes. The young priest at São Benedito, Father Antonio, he knows the truth. And the walls? Listen to the walls. The dead speak if you know how to hear. Elena pressed her ear against the wall. At first, nothing. Then, scratching, whispers, or just wind in the old pipes. Outside her window, the owl hooted again. 3 times. Her grandmother always said that meant. A scream shattered the night. Not from outside, from within the walls themselves. A woman's voice, crying a name. Maria Fernanda. Elena jerked away from the wall, heart racing. The first wife, the one who disappeared. In the corner of her vision, something moved. A shadow? A trick of moonlight? When she looked directly, nothing was there. But on the wall, written in what looked disturbingly like blood, were 2 words. Help us. Elena sank to her knees, clutching the rosary. She had survived her wedding night. But in this house of horrors, where dead wives whispered from the walls and every glass of wine could be your last, survival was just the beginning. Tomorrow would bring Augusto's rage, Dr. Vasconcelos's experiments, Ricardo's drunken violence, and somewhere in this mansion, evidence that could destroy them all if she lived long enough to find it. Elena Mantovani, née Ribeiro, closed her eyes and made a new vow. She would not be victim number 4. She would be their reckoning, even if it killed her. Dawn broke blood red over São Paulo, painting the Mantovani mansion in shades of warning. Elena stood at her barricaded door, listening to Augusto's rage echo through the halls as he discovered her deception. "Find her!" His roar shook the portraits on the walls. No one makes a fool of Augusto Mantovani. Elena had spent the night following Isidora's clues. Behind a false panel in the library, she'd found it all. Autopsy reports revealing arsenic poisoning, photographs of torture sessions in the basement, financial records of bribes to officials, and most damning, a VHS tape labeled Maria Fernanda, 1995. She'd watched it once. Once was enough. The screams would haunt her forever. Now, clutching a flash drive containing digitized evidence, Elena crept through servant passages. Marcia had shown her. Her destination, Father Antonio at San Benedito Church. If she could just reach him. Elena, Augusto's voice, sickeningly sweet now, drifted up the stairs. "My darling bride, come out. We need to talk about last night's misunderstanding." She pressed herself against the wall as footsteps approached. Ricardo and 2 security guards passed inches from her hiding spot. "Check the basement," Ricardo ordered. She might have found the room. The room, where Dr. Vasconcelos conducted his experiments, where wives became test subjects for untraceable poisons, where Maria Fernanda had died screaming, her body never found. Until Elena discovered the truth in Isidora's journal. She's still here, in the walls. The mansion's original blueprints revealed spaces between walls, old servant passages, long sealed, perfect for hiding bodies. A hand grabbed Elena's shoulder. She spun, ready to fight, then sagged with relief. "Tomas!" The elderly gardener, face weathered by sun and secrets, pressed a finger to his lips. "This way, quickly." He led her through a maze of passages to a service exit. Outside, his battered truck waited. "The church," Elena whispered. "I have evidence." Tomas shook his head sadly. "Father Antonio is dead. Car accident. Last night, after the wedding." Elena's knees buckled. Another murder disguised as coincidence. Then the police. "Commissioner Batista was at your wedding, Senora, shaking hands with your husband." Trapped. Every exit blocked. Every ally eliminated. "There's one person," Tomas said quietly. "A journalist. Marina Santos. She's been investigating the Mantovanis for years. Lost her sister to them. She worked here as a maid. Disappeared like the others." He handed Elena a burner phone. "Her number's programmed. But Senora..." His eyes filled with tears. "They'll kill us all for this." "They're killing us anyway," Elena replied. "Just slowly." The truck wouldn't start. Tomas tried again. Nothing. Through the windshield, Elena saw them coming. Ricardo, Dr. Vasconcelos, and Augusto himself, still in his wedding clothes, face twisted with fury. "Run," Tomas urged. "I'll hold them." The gunshot cut him off. Ricardo lowered his pistol, smirking as the old gardener crumpled. Elena ran. Behind her, Augusto's laughter echoed. "Run, little rabbit. The hunt is the best part." She reached the mansion's east wing, barricading herself in the music room. Her fingers flew over the burner phone, calling Marina Santos. "Please," she gasped when a woman answered. "I have evidence. The Mantovani murders. Everything." "Where are you?" "Trapped in the mansion. They're coming." The line went dead. They'd cut the cell towers. Footsteps in the hallway. Augusto's voice, sing-song and mocking. "Elena, my love, you can't hide forever." She grabbed a letter opener from the desk. Pitiful defense against guns, but better than nothing. The door splintered. Ricardo burst in, wild-eyed and drunk. "Got you now, stepmother." He advanced, pulling a syringe from his pocket. "Father says it's time for your medicine." Elena slashed with the letter opener, catching his cheek. Blood sprayed. Ricardo howled, stumbling back. She ran again, upstairs, down corridors, the mansion becoming a labyrinth of terror. Behind her, the hunt continued. In the attic, she found them, the wives, their perfume bottles, jewelry, photos. A shrine to Augusto's victims, and something else, a laptop still logged into Augusto's email. With shaking hands, Elena attached the flash drive and began uploading everything to multiple news outlets, the federal police, international authorities. The progress bar crept forward, 50%, 60%. Found you. Augusto stood in the doorway, no longer bothering with pretense. In his hand, a revolver. You've been very clever, Elena. Cleverer than the others. I almost admire. It's over, she said, gesturing to the laptop. Everyone will know. He smiled. You think you're the first to try? Marina Santos's sister gathered evidence too, as did a federal agent, a private investigator. All accidents, all tragedies. Money doesn't just buy silence, my dear. It buys reality itself. 75%, 80%. But you're special, Elena. You survived the wine. Outsmarted Ricardo. Found my secrets. So, I'll offer you a choice. He set a familiar bottle on the table. The poisoned wine. Drink it yourself, die peacefully. I'll spare your parents. Your mother gets her treatment. Your father keeps his farm. You'll be just another tragic young bride, overwhelmed by her new life. 85%, 90%. Or refuse and watch them die slowly. Your mother's treatment stops today. Your father has an accident next week. Everyone you love suffers because you had to be a hero. Elena's hand hovered over the bottle. Behind Augusto, she saw them, shadows of dead women. Natalia, Beatriz, Isadora. And deeper in the darkness, Maria Fernanda herself, her face a ruin of decay. Fight, they seemed to whisper. Make it count. 95%. You know what's funny? Elena said, uncorking the bottle. You think you're the monster in this story. She raised the wine to her lips. But monsters don't win against love. Instead of drinking, she threw the wine in Augusto's face. As he screamed, the liquid burning his eyes, she grabbed the laptop. Upload complete. Augusto fired blindly. Pain exploded in Elena's shoulder, but she kept moving. Down the attic. Stairs through smoke-filled corridors. When had the fire started? In the entrance hall, chaos reigned. Servants fled. Flames licked the walls. And outside, sirens wailed. Police, fire trucks, media vans. Marina Santos had come through. Ricardo appeared, blocking the door. You're not leaving alive. Behind Elena, Augusto descended the stairs, one eye destroyed by the wine, the other mad with rage. Trapped between father and son, Elena made her choice. She ran toward the flames. The fire had reached the east wing, the walls where Maria Fernanda was buried. As Elena passed, the old wood groaned and split. Through the gap, a skeletal hand reached out, wedding ring still gleaming. The dead wives had their vengeance. The ceiling collapsed. Ricardo vanished beneath burning timbers. Augusto's screams turned to gurgles as smoke filled his lungs. Elena stumbled outside, dress in flames, shoulder bleeding, but alive. Firefighters rushed forward. Cameras flashed. Marina Santos pushed through the crowd. The evidence? The journalist asked. Uploaded. Everything. Elena collapsed into waiting arms. It's over. But it wasn't. Not quite. 3 days later, as Elena sat beside her mother's hospital bed, treatment fully paid by anonymous donors touched by her story, news broke that Dr. Vasconcelos had been found dead in his cell. Apparent suicide. Commissioner Batista resigned, in disgrace. Senators fell. An empire of corruption crumbled. And Elena? She testified at countless hearings, wrote a book, started a foundation for abuse survivors. But late at night, she still heard them, whispers in the walls. Not of her, Apartment, but in her dreams. The dead wives finally at peace yet forever present. On the anniversary of the fire, Elena visited the ruins of the Mantovani mansion. Where the music room had been, white lilies grew, Isadora's favorite flower. She left her wedding ring among the ashes and walked away. Some cages, once escaped, should never be revisited. Some stories once ended should never be retold. Some monsters once slain still haunt the dark. But Elena Ribeiro, survivor, warrior, breaker of chains, had learned the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the price of salvation is everything you were, burned away to reveal everything you could become. In the distance, an owl hooted 3 times. This time it didn't mean death. It meant rebirth. The end. In the gleaming penthouse of Thorn Tower, Alexander Thorn stood with his back to the panoramic windows that framed the city like a living portrait he personally owned. At 63, his silver hair and tailored Brioni suit were as immaculate as the empire he'd built from nothing. The morning light caught on his titanium watch, a limited edition worth more than what most people earned in 5 years. "Excuse me, sir," his assistant Julian whispered from the doorway. "Your son is here." Alexander didn't turn. "Send him in." He heard the familiar, confident stride of his only heir, Elijah Thorn, Harvard Business School graduate, 32, years old and groomed since birth to inherit the $78 billion Thorn Industries conglomerate. But recently Elijah had been distracted. "Dad," Elijah began, his voice carrying an unusual tension. "Thanks for meeting me before your Shanghai flight." Alexander finally turned, his steel-gray eyes scanning his son. "You said it was important. Make it quick." Elijah squared his shoulders, a gesture Alexander recognized as preparation for confrontation. "I'm getting married." The words hung in the air like smoke. Alexander's expression didn't change, but something cold and calculating flickered behind his eyes. "Congratulations," he said flatly. "To which Vanderbilt or Astor daughter have you finally committed?" Elijah swallowed. "Her name is Sofia Mendez." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Alexander's finger tapped once. On his desk, the only visible sign of his displeasure. "Mendez?" His voice was soft, dangerous. "Not familiar with that family. Old money from Europe, perhaps?" "She's a kindergarten teacher in Queens," Elijah said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. "Her mother cleans houses. Her father died when she was 12. Alexander's laugh was like broken glass. "Is this some sort of joke?" "I love her, Dad." "Love?" Alexander spoke the word as if it were in a foreign language he refused to learn. "You are a Thorn. You don't marry for something as pedestrian as love. You marry for connections, for power, for advantage." Outside, clouds began to gather over the skyline, darkening the penthouse. "I'm marrying her in June," Elijah said. "I wanted you to hear it from me first." Alexander walked to his desk and pressed a button. Instantly, Julian appeared. "Call the board, emergency meeting at 3. He turned to Elijah. "You have a choice to make, son. Your birthright or this woman. That's not fair." "Fair?" Alexander's voice finally rose. "I built this empire from nothing. While you were being educated at private schools, I was working 18-hour days. While you vacationed in the Maldives, I was negotiating deals that changed the global economy. I didn't create a dynasty for you to throw it away on some gold digger from Queens." "Don't you dare call her that." Elijah's face flushed with anger. "You don't even know her." "I know enough." Alexander's voice became eerily calm again. "Bring her to dinner tomorrow night. My private dining room at La Ciel, 8 o'clock. Elijah hesitated, caught off guard by the unexpected invitation. "You want to meet her?" Alexander's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Of course, if she's to be a Thorn, I should at least see what we're getting." As Elijah left, relief visible in his shoulders, Alexander turned back to the windows. The gathering. Storm now mirrored his own thoughts. No kindergarten teacher was going to dilute his bloodline or get her hands on his legacy. By this time tomorrow, this little problem would be taken care of, permanently. Sofia Mendez stared at her reflection in the restroom mirror of La Ciel, the Michelin-starred restaurant perched on the 67th floor of one of Manhattan's most exclusive buildings. Her fingers trembled slightly as she adjusted the modest pearl earrings her mother had given her for her college graduation. The black dress she'd splurged on, the most expensive clothing she'd ever purchased, suddenly felt inadequate among the wealth that surrounded her. "You belong here as much as anyone," she whispered to herself, repeating the mantra Elijah had told her that morning. Outside the restroom, Elijah paced nervously. When Sofia emerged, his face softened with admiration. "You look beautiful," he said, taking her hand. "I'm terrified," Sofia admitted, her voice barely audible over the ambient piano music floating through the restaurant. "What if he hates me?" Elijah squeezed her hand. "Just be yourself. That's who I fell in love with." The maitre d' led them through the main dining room, a symphony of crystal, white linen, and soft lighting, to a private door guarded by a suited man with an earpiece. Beyond it was a separate dining room with a single table overlooking the glittering city. Alexander Thorne stood by the windows, a glass of amber liquid in his hand. "Father," Elijah said, his voice formal, "this is Sofia Mendez." Alexander turned slowly. His gaze swept over Sofia with clinical precision, taking in every detail from her simple hairstyle to her department store shoes. His expression revealed nothing. "Miss Mendez," he said finally, not extending his hand. "Please sit." The meal began with painful formality. Alexander asked pointed questions about Sofia's family, her education at the state university, her job teaching at a public school in Queens. Each answer seemed to be mentally catalogued and filed away as evidence. "And your mother," Alexander said, cutting into his Wagyu steak with surgical precision. "She cleans homes for a living?" "Yes," Sofia answered, her chin lifting slightly. "She raised me alone after my father died. She worked 3 jobs sometimes to put me through college." "How inspirational," Alexander said, the word dripping with condescension. "Tell me, have you ever been to Europe?" "No, I haven't had the opportunity to travel much." "Do you speak any languages other than English and whatever Spanish your mother taught you?" Elijah set down his fork with a clatter. "Dad, it's a simple question," Alexander interrupted, his eyes never leaving Sofia. "I studied French in college," Sofia replied, her voice steady despite the flush rising to her cheeks. "I'm not fluent, but I can manage a conversation." Alexander smiled thinly. "A conversation about what? The weather? Certainly not art or literature or global economics." "That's enough," Elijah said, his voice tight with anger. "No, please," Alexander continued, signaling for more wine. "I'm simply getting to know the woman my son has apparently chosen, the woman who would represent the Thorne name at global summits, at charity galas, at board meetings." He leaned forward. "Tell me, Miss Mendez, what's your net worth?" Sofia's hands clenched in her lap. "I don't think that's less than 6 figures, I'd wager," Alexander cut in. "Do you have any idea what my son is worth?" "I don't care about Elijah's money," Sofia said, her voice finally betraying emotion. Alexander laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "Everyone cares about money, Miss Mendez, especially those who've never had it." Elijah stood abruptly. "We're leaving." "Sit down," Alexander commanded. "I'm not finished." "Yes, you are," Elijah replied, helping Sofia to her feet. Alexander's eyes narrowed. "If you walk out that door with her, consider your position at Thorne Industries terminated. Your trust fund frozen. Your entire future gone." The room fell silent except for the soft hum of the city below. Sofia felt her heart hammering in her chest. "You can't be serious," Elijah whispered. "I've never been more serious in my life," Alexander replied, casually taking a sip of wine. "Choose, son. Your birthright or this distraction." Sofia felt the world tilting beneath her feet. She looked at Elijah, saw the conflict raging behind his eyes, the impossible choice between the only family he had ever known and their future together. "You don't have to do this," she whispered to him, tears blurring her vision. "I would never ask you to give up everything." Alexander watched them, a predatory satisfaction gleaming in his eyes. He had calculated this moment perfectly, the ultimate test of his control. "Perhaps I've been unclear," Alexander said, reaching into his jacket pocket. He withdrew a check and slid it across the table to Sophia. $1 million, tax-free, for you to walk away and never contact my son again. Sophia stared at the check, then at Alexander's cold smile, feeling as though she might be sick. The cruelty was so calculated, so precise, designed to strip away every shred of her dignity. "Now we understand each other," Alexander continued smoothly. "Everyone has a price, Miss Mendez. I'm simply offering to pay yours." The autumn rain lashed against the windows of Sophia's tiny Queens apartment as she grated papers at her kitchen table. 3 months had passed since that fateful night at La Ciel. 3 months since Elijah had stammered apologies, his face contorted with indecision, before finally crumpling the check and walking out with her. 3 months since Alexander Thorne had methodically destroyed his son's life. First came the termination letter from Thorne Industries, then the eviction notice from Elijah's company-owned apartment, the frozen accounts, the canceled credit cards, the whisper campaign that spread through Manhattan's elite circles like wildfire. Elijah Thorne had suffered some kind of breakdown, was possibly unstable, definitely unreliable for business. Sophia's phone buzzed with a text message. "Elijah. Interview went well. Home soon." She set down her red pen and rubbed her temples. Elijah was on his 4th job interview this week. The previous 3 companies had mysteriously rescinded their offers after initial enthusiasm. It didn't take much imagination to guess why. A knock at the door startled her. Too early to be Elijah. She peered through the peephole to see an elegantly dressed woman in her 60s, her silver-streaked black hair pulled into a severe bun. "Ms. Mendez?" The woman's voice was clipped, professional. "My name is Victoria Lang. I represent Alexander Thorne." Sophia's heart stuttered. She opened the door but didn't invite the woman in. "What do you want?" Victoria's eyes took in the modest apartment with the same clinical assessment Alexander had used on Sophia. "Mr. Thorne wishes to speak with you. Alone." "Why would I ever agree to that?" Victoria extended a business card. "Because you care about Elijah's future and because you're smarter than Mr. Thorne initially gave you credit for." An hour later, Sophia found herself back in Manhattan, this time in Alexander's private office at Thorne Tower. The space was cavernous, dominated by a mahogany desk that seemed designed to diminish anyone sitting across from it. Alexander didn't stand when she entered. "Thank you for coming, Miss Mendez." "Let's skip the pretense," Sophia said, remaining standing. "What do you want?" Something like respect flickered in Alexander's eyes. "Direct. Good. I've been watching you and my son these past months. You've been resilient. We love each other. And look where that love has gotten him," Alexander replied coldly. "From heir to a global empire to interviewing for middle management positions that mysteriously fall through." Sophia felt her nails digging into her palms. "You're blocking him from getting work." "I'm protecting my interests," Alexander corrected, "but I'm prepared to stop, to reinstate Elijah at Thorne Industries, to return his inheritance." He leaned forward. "For a price." "Another check?" Sophia asked bitterly. "No. I've realized money isn't your motivation. Admirable, if foolish." Alexander stood and walked to the window. "I'm offering Elijah his life back, his purpose. In exchange, you end the relationship. Make him believe it's your decision, that you never loved him." The cruelty of the request took Sophia's breath away. "You want me to break his heart?" "I want to save him from wasting his potential on a kindergarten teacher from Queens," Alexander replied. "He was born for greatness. With you, he'll spend his life in mediocrity, growing to resent you more each day." Tears stung Sophia's eyes. "You don't know your son at all." I know him better than you ever will, Alexander countered. I've watched him since he took his first breath. I know what he needs, even when he doesn't. He pressed a button and Victoria entered with a document. This is a non-disclosure agreement. Sign it, end things with Elijah tonight, and he gets everything back. His position, his home, his future. Alexander's voice softened with calculated precision. If you truly love him, you'll want what's best for him. Sophia stared at the document, her vision blurring. And if I refuse? Alexander's smile was chilling in its sincerity. Then I'll continue ensuring he never works again. Not in finance, not in business, not even teaching at that little school you love so much. I have influence in places you cannot imagine. Sophia took the pen Victoria offered, her hand trembling. You'll destroy him either way, she whispered. No, Alexander replied. I'm saving him. And one day when he's running Thorn Industries, when he's married to someone worthy of our name, he'll understand that everything I did was out of love. As Sophia signed her name on the document, she felt as though she were signing away her soul. Outside the tower, the rain had stopped, but the sky remained dark with storm clouds gathering on the horizon. The winter gala at the Metropolitan Museum of Art marked the social highlight of the season. Alexander Thorn stood at the center of admiring sycophants, his tuxedo impeccable, his demeanor regal. 6 months had passed since Sophia had walked out of Elijah's life with rehearsed words that shattered him. I never loved you. I was using you. The plan had worked perfectly. After weeks of despair, Elijah had returned to the fold, hollow-eyed but compliant. Alexander had orchestrated everything. The sympathetic welcome back, the carefully chosen therapy sessions with a psychiatrist on his payroll, the introduction to Cassandra Winters, daughter of a shipping magnate and deemed suitable for the Thorn name. Alexander, Gregory Palmer, CEO of a rival tech company, approached with champagne in hand. Your stock hit another record high today. The Thorn touch turns everything to gold. Alexander nodded with practiced humility. The team deserves the credit. And how's Elijah? I hear wedding bells might be ringing soon. Cassandra is a perfect match, Alexander replied smoothly. The announcement should come this spring. As the conversation continued, Alexander's attention drifted to the entrance where the museum's newest board members were being announced. His expression froze when he spotted a familiar face among them. Carmen Mendez, Sophia's mother, elegantly dressed and accompanied by Richard Hargrove, one of New York's most renowned philanthropists. Excuse me, Alexander murmured, moving closer to overhear their conversation. Mrs. Mendez's foundation has done remarkable work providing educational opportunities in underserved communities, Hargrove was saying to the museum director. Her daughter's research on early childhood development has revolutionized approaches nationwide. Alexander felt a cold trickle of unease. This wasn't part of his calculations. Across the room, Elijah entered alone, his engagement to Cassandra, still unofficial despite Alexander's careful orchestration. His son's eyes were clear tonight, more focused than they had been in months. There was something different about him, a hardness that hadn't been there before. Alexander watched as Elijah spotted Carmen Mendez, watched as recognition dawned on his son's face, watched as Elijah approached her with purpose. It's time. For your speech, Mr. Thorn, his assistant reminded him. Alexander nodded distractedly. He ascended to the podium, his practiced smile in place as applause filled the grand hall. But his eyes remained fixed on Elijah and Carmen, deep in conversation now. It is my great honor to announce tonight that Thorn Industries will be donating $50 million to the museum's educational programs, Alexander began, his voice commanding attention. As he continued his prepared remarks, he noticed Elijah slipping away with Carmen toward a private alcove. Something was wrong. His carefully constructed world was shifting beneath his feet. Alexander cut his speech short to thunderous applause and made his way through the crowd with determined grace. When he reached the alcove, he found Elijah holding a document, the NDA Sophia had signed. Looking for this, Dad? Elijah asked, his voice deadly quiet. Alexander assessed the situation with the same cold calculation he applied to business deals. How did you get that? Does it matter? Elijah's eyes were hard, unrecognizable. For months I've been playing your game, pretending to be the broken son who'd seen the light, pretending to forget Sophia, all while using the resources you so generously restored to investigate what really happened. Carmen Mendez stood silently beside him, her expression a mirror of her daughter's dignity. You don't understand what's at stake, Alexander began. I understand perfectly, Elijah interrupted. I understand that you threatened the woman I love, that you forced her to break my heart to save me. His laugh was brittle, humorless. Did you know she's been working with education researchers at Columbia? That her curriculum is being adopted by schools across the country? That while you were busy trying to destroy her, she was building something meaningful? Alexander felt the first genuine flicker of fear. Whatever you think you know, I know everything, Elijah said, including what happened to Rivera Technologies after they refused your takeover, the accounting irregularities that mysteriously appeared in their books, the witnesses who suddenly changed their testimonies. Alexander's face paled. Be very careful, son. No, Dad. You be careful. Elijah handed him a different document. The board meets tomorrow at 9. This is my proposal for your retirement. Generous terms, full benefits, a legacy intact, publicly at least. You wouldn't dare, Alexander whispered. I've spent 6 months gathering evidence of every questionable deal, every ethical breach, every line you've crossed, Elijah replied. Sophia taught me something you never could. That real strength isn't about control. It's about integrity. Behind them, the gala continued, oblivious to the dynasty crumbling in their midst. You need me, Alexander said, desperation edging into his voice. Elijah's expression softened with something like pity. No, Dad. I needed you to love me, to trust me, to see me as more than a vessel for your ambitions. He straightened his shoulders. Sign the retirement papers by morning, or I release everything. Your choice. As Elijah walked away with Carmen, Alexander Thorne stood alone, the document trembling in his hands. For the first time in his life, he had been outmaneuvered, not by a business rival, but by the son he had tried to control and the woman he had underestimated. That night, as snow began to fall over Manhattan, Alexander signed the papers in his empty penthouse. The empire he had built would continue without him. The dynasty would take a direction he had never envisioned. And somewhere, in Queens, the woman he had judged unworthy was helping to create a legacy more meaningful than all his billions.